Hello everyone, welcome to Design Twist. This is Trevor, and today I'm going to be designing Mario enemies, specifically a Goomba, a Koopa, and then one other one that all have like a toxic sludge theme. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and like a lot of other people, I really liked the expressive NPCs in the Paper Mario series, at least the early Paper Mario games. They had all sorts of random Goombas, Koopas, Piantas, Lakitu, that had weird personalities and hairstyles and coats and hats. It was really, we were kind of spoiled with that game. Compared to a lot of other Mario titles, despite how good they are, a lot of the story and character is relegated to kind of the main few characters, and that's not really what they make Mario games for. But really with those first two Paper Mario games, and by extension, the original, where they got that from, Super Mario RPG, the ability to really explore a Mario universe, the Mushroom Kingdom, in an RPG setting was just really cool. And so I really love when they put more design effort and character and names behind just these regular characters like Goombas and Koopas and such. So I wanted to do that, and I definitely wanted to deviate from my first video. It was a Pokemon video. I'm staying with the Nintendo theme for the second video, but I wanted to do Mario characters for this one. So the theme was they are enemies that use toxic sludge or poison, and what I was thinking was that there would be a stage that would have like piles of muck or poison gas, and then I eventually came up with the idea for this Goomba and Koopa duo, where if they run over a pile of sludge or like poison slick on the ground, they would change in some way. So this Koopa would have a spear that it would throw, and if it ran over the sludge, it would dip its spear in the sludge and then run at you and try to hit you. It would do more damage over time because you're poisoned. The Goomba would just be a regular Goomba, slow enemy that would walk at you, but if it walked over the sludge, it would like slip and do a spin dash like Sonic, so it would immediately become like a faster threat. And I was thinking maybe you couldn't jump on it or something like that. Although in my head, I'm imagining a Mario game that's a lot more action-oriented. Imagine like a Ori Will-o'-the-Wisps type Mario game, or like some kind of Mario Metroidvania, which is getting real weird with the naming conventions there, but that would be pretty fun. So as I was exploring these designs, I wanted to give them kind of a dangerous feel. They look like, you know, they might be scavengers that live in some kind of environment with toxic sludge or pollution or something. And if Mario comes around, they're just going to beat him up, you know. But what I'm including right now is the entire sketch process. I say entire, but I cut out the early explorations where I was figuring out basically how to draw a Koopa or Goomba. A Goomba is really just a mushroom shape with some eyeballs on it, but I wanted to capture the feel. I hadn't drawn one before, so I wanted to explore different funky expressions and ways to draw and emote these bodies. So I settled on these two sketches right here that you see. Putting the gas mask on the Koopa was dope. As soon as I put it on there, it's like half gas mask, half plague mask, and they already have like little like kind of turtle-like snouts like that, so it already looks kind of cool. I love the silhouette of it, and I love the design. It makes it look kind of like a badass. The Goomba, I wanted each of these to have a like face covering of some sort, because they're going to live in a dangerous environment. So I was trying to design these as if they're all together, they're all part of the same unit, and they look like they like live in the same place. Mario is the outsider in whatever kind of level he would find these creatures in. So once I settled on a shape and an expression that I really liked for them, I started working on this kind of cleanup of the sketch. This isn't the final line work just yet, but I wanted to make it really look like I was ready to start the line work and I had the design down. I still changed a tiny little thing or two here and there, but for all intents and purposes, these are the final designs of what I end up finishing. I was looking up various different kinds of Mario enemies before this, and I was going to do a fire theme, but there's enough fire Koopas already. I mean, hell, Bowser is a fire Koopa at the end of the day. But there was the Fire Bro. I think there were a couple of other fire Koopas that threw fireballs. And I didn't want it to throw a projectile. There's all the kind of bro series of enemies, hammer bro, boomerang bro, that kind of thing. But a Koopa throwing a spear is cool, and it doubles as a weapon it could try to run up and hit you with. And I could be wrong, but I can't, there probably is a spear Koopa in some game, but I can't recall a time where a Koopa ran up and hit me with something. It's like, oh man, Koopas are always throwing stuff trying to stay back, or they go in their shells. But if a Koopa just ran up on me with like brass knuckles, it would be kind of cool. So that's what I was going for here. This Koopa isn't going to throw things at you more than it's just going to run up and get in your face. Meanwhile, having second thoughts about the Goomba, if we use the same thought process for the Goomba, Goombas always walk at you. They walk at you slowly. So having a twist where it flies at you very quickly is, I'm sure, something that's been done before. But if it was tied to its environment, that would end up being a cool twist. So right now I'm doing the clean line work. I made it slightly higher res so I could get some good thick lines, and it's going to look really cool once it's colored. The Koopa and the Goomba are each wearing a bandana with a special little logo on it, and later on I incorporate that logo into the logo for this little gang of creatures. I know in the future when I do more sets of Mario enemies, keeping it to 2 or 3 is probably a good idea. That's just enough work to kind of fill out a video. And there are so many like Mushroom Kingdom or otherwise Mario enemies to pick from. I could do a whole video just designing different Pokies. Like it's such a fun universe with such a long history. Even taking something as simple as a Koopa and a Goomba is just so fun. Maybe I'll draw a princess to go with this environment. That would be really fun, actually. That might be my next Mario related video. As I'm recording this, it's a week till Christmas. I say that, but I don't have that big of a backlog, so it's probably going to go up within 2 or 3 days. It'll go up a week before Christmas. But yeah, I'm working on the final line work. I'm almost done with these two. Putting little designs on them. The Goomba has a little X on its head. The Koopa has a little skull. Earlier on, I was playing with other symbols, and just imagining a Goomba with like a nuclear radioactive symbol on its head. It's a little over the top. I couldn't imagine a Mario game where a Goomba has the legitimate effects of a toxic sludge on its body. We're getting into horror territory. We're going to have some kind of Resident Evil Mario crossover eventually. But no, I just keep it lighthearted, keep it silly. A skull and an X. You know, that communicates to the audience that, you know, these two are no joke. They are not to be played with. Thinking about video games where you fight a normal enemy and then later you see that same enemy, but it's red. And then, you know, okay, this one must be stronger. A Goomba with an X on its head? Oh, you know, that's the boss right there. You don't mess with him. So I'm basically wrapping up the line work right now, and I'm moving on to flatting it. Flatting is kind of a technique that's a holdover from when I studied comics. It's the first step in coloring something. I'm going to take the entire positive space of the piece, the entire area that's going to be colored, and make it one layer. And then break down each separate object in the drawing that's going to be a different color into its own layer. Each of those layers are going to be made clipping masks in Photoshop to the original base layer, so none of it goes outside that original shape. It's just kind of a way to stay organized and keep everything neat, so you don't have to worry about going outside the lines or anything like that. It's just a nice little quality of life setup for coloring. I watched a video recently by Rasputin on YouTube called The Color of Corruption, and it's about why purple is the color of poison. And that's a really fun video. I'll link in the description. Go check it out. He makes great videos too. Go check out his channel. So of course when I was designing these, I'm like, okay, they have to be purple. I'm sticking with the purple. You can definitely create a game where the corruption is a different color. I mean, look at Hollow Knight. The corruption is bright orange. When you see something that's bright orange in Hollow Knight, it is unnatural and wrong. You do not want to see anything bright orange in that game, and I will let you play through that game. If you haven't, to experience that is probably my favorite game of all time. That it is criminal that game is $15. It doesn't make any sense. Silk Song could come out in 2029 and cost $70, and I would pre-order it day one. I love that game. I do not care. Anyway, that's a tangent. But these enemies in Mario are all warm colors. The Koopas are yellow, and sometimes they have green shells, sometimes red shells. I mean, the blue shell, if you really want to get bopped when you're in first place at Mario Kart, they can be blue. And there's probably a purple Koopa, but I don't know one off the top of my head. So if I drew this creature again and you could actually see the shell, it would probably be purple. I should have drawn it in a pose where you could see the shell. But obviously the main colors for these two are purple. So yeah, the Goombas are always brown and beige. The Koopas are always or usually yellow. So they have a lot of warm colors going on off the bat. So I wanted to go with a cool color. So going with the purple for the corruption, the poison, it worked out color theory wise. I bring in a light blue color later to be the secondary color scheme for these characters. And then the third character that I draw has a tertiary color. I think it all looks really nice together. And I think my favorite tiny design element of both these two are just the little spikes on the Goomba shoes. There is no circumstance in which that will ever matter or come up. Mario will never get kicked by this Goomba, but the fact that it has spikes on the tips of its shoes, you know it's ready for the smoke. You know it's ready for combat. This is not a Goomba you're just going to jump on top of. Well, it is, because the spike would be on its head if you couldn't. But it likes to believe that the spikes on its shoes will help. If I had a bestiary for this game, and I had to write blurbs about the characters, the Goomba would be particularly proud of the spikes that it put on its shoes because it did it itself, and it makes it look cool. It's punk. I've always had a special place in my heart for Mario games growing up when I did. There were definitely a lot of nights where me and my friends would be playing Mario Kart, Mario Party, Mario Tennis, and not exactly experiencing the old Super Mario World, Super Mario Land games. They were just slightly before my time, I would say, early 90s, late 80s. I wasn't really experiencing those games. The Mario I grew up with was Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and all of those crazy sports and racing and party games on the N64 and the GameCube. So my idea of the Mario world was just like this huge, goofy world with all these wacky characters that had snowball fights and ran across beams with fish and plants trying to grab them. Like the mini games of Mario Party are such an exercise in coming up with goofy situations to put your characters in. It really makes the world seem bigger. I don't think a lot of people talk about how much Mario Party makes the Mario world feel bigger. And that combined with the Paper Mario series and Super Mario RPG, it really made the Mushroom Kingdom feel like a world that I wanted to explore. But then those main games like 64, Sunshine, even Galaxy gave a completely different experience that was good, but it wasn't what I was really looking for. And its praises have been sung by a select few people. I say select few, but it's a lot of people. But Thousand Year Door is so cool. It's just exploring every single little weird Mario enemy and different locations, different biomes, with Mario there being his little silly silent protagonist self. I don't know. I just really like that game, and I like the design philosophy and the storytelling. But I will say I've only heard good things about the Mario and Luigi series, and it definitely has its following, and I've never played a single one of them. So by the time I make another Mario video, maybe I'll have played one of those and I'll talk about it, because I have heard good things about those, so I'm probably missing out. However, moving on in the video, you can see that my third enemy is going to be a Cheep Cheep. For people who aren't familiar, these are the fish, the kind of basic fish enemy in the Mario universe. I'm not imagining that these are underwater enemies in this game, but the Cheep Cheeps that kind of jump out of a puddle or a pool and do an arc to try to hit Mario, with the twist that these are the source of the sludge. So if you come across a pile of sludge, a Cheep Cheep will jump out of it, make an arc, and then create a new puddle where it landed. So the longer you leave these things alive, the more dangerous the other enemies become, because there's more sludge on the ground. So it kind of brings to mind Mario Sunshine or Splatoon, where handling the sludge on the ground is just as important as handling the enemies. And I was imagining this as a side-scrolling platformer, but it could work just as well as a 3D platformer like Sunshine, where you actually have the, hey, let's say this is Mario Sunshine 2, and this is the gang where it's like, hey, you know what? Baby Bowser was actually cooking. Put the poison everywhere. Isle Delfino has been resting on its laurels for too long. We're the pollution gang. I'm actually calling these the grime gang. This is the grime gang. And the grime gang is going to come around and pick up where Bowser Jr. or Baby Bowser left off. It's Bowser Jr. They're going to pick up where Bowser Jr. left off. And Mario's going to have to, they got to call Mario. Hey, man, last time we had pollution, everything went wrong, but you saved us. And we blamed you. We're sorry. We need you to come back. We'll give you all expenses paid vacation. And Peach is like, well, let's go. So that's probably a pretty fun setup for these guys. And there would be some kind of... I mentioned a princess earlier. It could be a princess. It could be like another Mario villain coming back. It could be Wario. Who knows? But this being a successor to Sunshine is actually a really good idea, considering I'm basing them all off of Poison. That was probably the most enticing part of the first part of Mario Sunshine, is that, oh, there's going to be different types of goop. There's electric goop and lava and, poison, and then there's goop that you can't clean up. There's going to be bloopers and piranha plants coming out of it. But then a lot of people kind of have this complaint with Super Mario Sunshine, which is the longer the game goes on, they run out of ideas really quick and have to pad out the back half of that game with collecting coins and racing pianissimo and retreading really similar boss fights, red coin challenges. And on the surface, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. I did them all. They were all kind of fun. But there was kind of a promise in the first half of that game that made me want to see a lot more than I saw in the second half of that game. So you know what? Maybe we just headcanon that the second half of this game is this. And the Grime Gang starts following Bowser Jr. and just goes crazy all over the island, making all kinds of different sludge that Mario has to clean up, and he becomes the hero. Not that Sunshine's a bad game, it's fun. But yeah, I could also just see this as a platformer. It's easier to imagine the platformer in your head, especially after playing Mario Maker a lot. Just imagining a poison sludge feature in that game where all of the enemies who interact with it would do something different. So if you put a normal cheap on the board and a poison sludge pile and it landed in one, it would become this new toxic cheap or grime cheap or whatever you would call it. So as I was designing cheap, what was going through my head was, this thing is so simplistic. It's almost more simplistic than a Goomba, which is weird because like a Goomba really is just three shapes. But this thing has like a mohawk, it has fins. The fact that it already has kind of like a mohawk fin thing on its head already lent itself to this punk aesthetic I was going for with the Grime Gang. And I was really stretching trying to figure out, what do I add to this thing that keeps it identifiable as a cheap, but also makes it cool and poison and grimy. I put some holes in the tails here, and I thought, I'm gonna give it goggles. But then something in my head was saying, they already have goggles. And so I went and looked it up, and they don't have goggles, but I still could have sworn, no, the fish in Mario have goggles. What are you talking about? I thought they'd always had goggles, and it was breaking my brain that Cheeps did not wear goggles. But apparently that enemy is called Blurp, and it's a different thing, but it is a fish that wears goggles. So maybe this is designed after a Cheep, but maybe it's, it's taken a nod from Blurp, and it wears goggles because it normally lives in clear, clean water. But now here it is that swims around in a sludge pile. It doesn't want to get it in its eyes. As another joke, I could have given it a snorkel, a fish that needs to breathe clean air because it's underneath the poison. But if you clean up the poison under the Cheep, maybe it just hits the ground and starts splashing around. That would be that. Like, why does it even have the snorkel? That'd be a pretty funny enemy. I was really experimenting with color here, and obviously knowing that this purple would be the main color for the whole gang, and this light blue was going to get brought in as a secondary color, I wanted to come up with a third color because the Goombas got brown, the Koopas got yellow, the Cheep needs its own color, but I didn't want to repeat yellow. Cheeps typically have these little red fins, so red is going to be the third color. It kind of works. I didn't pick a red that would take over the color scheme. The red that I got, I feel, looks good with the other colors. So I incorporated the light blue in the same way I did for the other two, which is putting it in the logo. The Koopa has a skull, like I said. The Goomba's got an X. So I give this Cheep Cheep a similar X that I'm going to pull into a logo later for the Grime Gang that makes them feel like a cohesive unit. But here we have, probably not their boss, but you know, this is their heavy. It's spreading the toxic sludge, it's making everybody more powerful. It has to protect its own eyes, but it's really popping off. It's helping everybody protect their warehouse or whatever they live. So yeah, this was super fun. I'm finishing up the Cheep Cheep. I gotta make the shadows look nice and make the line work look exactly how I want it. And in a moment, I'm gonna add a poison layer that goes around it just to give it some more visual flair. Because while a Cheep Cheep is just a bowling ball with some fins jumping around, it is gonna be the thing that's spreading the poison. So it has to be important and look important with the actual poison. So that'll be the final element I add to the design. This was a lot of fun, and when I first had this idea to make a channel or to make some kind of series of twists on existing designs and characters from games, Mario Enemies was the first thing that came into my head. And it was, like I mentioned, probably just the hours and days I spent playing Mario Party and Mario Kart and stuff. All of these little enemies like Thwomps and Ukiki that are iconic to the series could be twisted in so many different ways. Like I said, a whole video about Pokey could happen. I might not, it is just a stack of circles, but it would be a pretty good design challenge to make 10 different Pokies that all interact differently. But yes, this was a lot of fun. I may bring the Grime Gang idea back in some capacity later, but the next time I do Mario characters, maybe it'll be a whole different thing. It'll be a whole different idea. And I'm gonna make these designs stickers on my shop right after this video goes up. I'll post about them on my Blue Sky, Instagram, obviously all the main stuff. Hit the video with a like. If you want to see more designs like this, I'm going to try to post at least one a week, maybe 2 a week. This is going to be a regular thing. I've had so much fun making these first 2 videos. I already have 3 more things drawn and ready to color that have been recorded. So I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. The next video, though, will have to be something Christmas themed, because it's going to go up probably right before Christmas, probably Christmas Eve. I have a couple of commissions to get to before then. And hey, if you're interested in commissions, check my website. I'll have a little thing on there that says, my personal website, I'll have a little thing on there that says whether commissions are open or not, or just talk to me on Blue Sky, whatever. You can DM me. Right now, my videos only get a few views, maybe in the future a couple thousand, who knows. So thank you so much for watching Design Twist. This was a lot of fun. I'm definitely going to do something like this again in the future. So have a good day. Peace.